Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to this exclusive fireside chat with two industry leaders. I'm Pooja Bothra, Senior Content Lead, ETHR World. This fireside chat is a part of Thought Leadership series on mapping the business impact of learning. By bringing industry leaders from the L&D domain, we are creating a depository of knowledge that will help you broaden your perspective and be cognizant of the ongoing trends shaping this domain. And I'm delighted to introduce the two speakers for this episode. Please join me in welcoming Gurkiran Deep Singh, he likes to be called GD, is Head Talent Management, Learning and Organizational Development at Titan Company. GD is a chemical engineer and holds an MBA from the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. His experience spans diverse functions across banking, IT, telecom, infrastructure, heavy engineering, and retail industries. Over the last 25 years, GD has worked with organizations such as Standard Chartered, Dell, Indus Towers, Ingersoll Rand, and now Titan in both line and support functions. Welcome to this fireside chat, GD. We also have with us Dallas Krishnan, MD for Coursera Enterprise India, Australia, and New Zealand. Dallas believes in enabling enterprises and universities to learn without limits through the Coursera platform. In his view, the power of lifelong learning and upskilling is critical to the digital transformation of companies. He has worked for leading organizations like Salesforce, Amazon Web Services, IBM, and SAP. He has worked extensively across India and APAC markets. Welcome to this fireside chat, Dallas. Great to have you as usual.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Pooja, and always wonderful to be with you. Look forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Pooja.
My first question is for you, GD. There is a lot going on in the business world today because of the pace of technologies. In fact, yesterday I was hearing Indira Nooyi. So she had done this, chat with Leena Nair. And she said that, the current times are far more difficult to survive in the corporate world, the business world, because of technology. Technology forces you to learn. And if you're not going to learn, you can't survive. So what are some of the major skill requirements you see today? And how do you keep up with the pace of technology and the shelf life of talent being so short?
I think very relevant question, Pooja. And at the risk of sounding cliched, I'd like to start with calling out digital and technology itself as skills that are important in the current context. However, I'd shy away from broad brushing this across all employee segments. I really see three constituents here. While the role of working with the actual technology and familiarity with tools and technology may rest with specialists, it's imperative for business decision makers to understand the possibilities that this digital revolution presents, and to then be able to direct design of new solutions. And third, for users in general to be able to relate to and leverage technology and tools in their day-to-day work. Linked to that is another crucial capability, which is systems thinking, that enables us to see how parts interrelate and how systems work over time and in the context of larger ecosystems. And this allows us to work towards holistic solutions rather than trying to put together things piecemeal. There are also a few skills that have been on my evergreen list of skills to have, and they are empathy and emotional intelligence. The pandemic also taught us the importance of compassion and the ability to build communities as crucial traits. My topmost skill to look for is learning agility, which I believe allows us to adapt and perform in new and unfamiliar situations. Finally, I'd also like to add the ability to think without boundaries and entrepreneurial drive to this list of skills. If I were to shift to the second part of your question on pace of change of technology and hence the shelf life of talent, I actually disagree that the shelf life of talent is short. It may be so in certain industries, but not true universally. And why do I say that? If individuals and organizations have a bent towards continuous learning, shelf life of talent can actually be quite long. At Titan, we actually look for curiosity and a learning mindset as a key leadership tenet. It's embedded in our competency framework. We also encourage employees to build a very diverse set of experiences over their careers through our career philosophy, which we've coined as 2 to 2 plus 7. And the framework promotes employees to build experience across multiple businesses, functions, and geographies. That's the 2 into 2 into 2. And in that process, build diverse experiences like starting something new, managing a turnaround, scaling up a business, leading an org-wide project, and so on, which is the plus 7. And if we kind of adopt that mindset of continuous and lifelong learning, which you also mentioned as Dulles' philosophy, I believe that the shelf life of talent could be significantly long.
Thank you, GD. Very valid points. And I could not agree more. All that we read about shelf life being less than 2 years, I feel, lifelong learning is the key to kind of expand it and, always be relevant in the work that you're doing. Dulles, would like to know from you, what are some of the trends you have observed about the in-demand skills and how will they transform the future?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Pooja. First and foremost, GD, good to meet you and to hear perspectives from you. Titan is a company that I admire, and I've seen closely some of the transformation that has happened in the company. So we couldn't have gotten a better person to represent from in the context of a customer here. So
thanks, Dulles.
So I'll give you the perspective in the context of how we are seeing skills evolving. And to GD's point, one of the surveys that we did with World Economic Forum spoke of 2 areas, digital and technology, and I'll call that as digital skills in a simplistic form, and human skills are the 2 most in-demand skills that we are projecting as the skills of the future, right? So in terms of the broad categorization. Now, if I were to, break that down and, it will sound like I'm repeating what GD said, but I'll just read out what the World Economic Forum 2025 forecast for future skills are. Number 1 is actually analytical thinking and innovation. And goes with that, what WEF talks about is active learning and learning strategies. To your point around learning agility, GD, I think that probably comes together with that. The third one is actually complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality, and initiatives. So these are 3, I would say, problem solving skills that come in next. Then there is the context of working with people, which is around leadership and social influence as a key skill. And then comes the technology areas, which essentially is tech usage and development, be it in the context of technology use, monitoring and control, technology design, programming. So those are the next set of skills. And the final 2 essentially are in the areas of self-management, which is resilience, tolerance, stress management, flexibility, right? So this constitutes how we see the skills of the future evolving. And if you see here, technology is one dimension. While it's an important dimension in the context of how businesses will leverage and transform itself, be it in the context of innovation, be it in the context of digital transformation, right? And even in the context of new product development, right? So technology is now creating new products in itself. That's one part, but it's incomplete without the human element that goes with it. So that's how we see the skills of the future emerging.
Very interesting, Dulles. GD, it'll be really insightful for our viewers to know what are some of the best practices you've initiated for continuous learning in Titan, and what challenges do you face and how do you overcome them?
Sure, Pooja. And before I kind of answer that, I think I really like the way Dulles classified skills and brought in the human element of those skills as well, which is extremely crucial in specifically today's times. And while it's been evergreen, I think it's become increasingly important now. Pooja, let me possibly also slightly broaden that question and talk about how we've looked at building new capabilities in the organization. And then in that same breath, talk about how we reskill the organization. And I'll use an example to illustrate this. A few years back, when we wanted to strengthen our analytics and e-commerce capabilities in the organization, we actually created a digital center of excellence as part of our organization structure. And we populated this team with experts from outside because we needed to deepen capability, and people from within who we believed had a higher propensity to pick up these newer age skills. And this team was tasked with both scouting for solutions, technologies, and platforms, as well as working with the businesses for deployment. This amalgamation of talent from outside and within enabled us to build capability at a much faster pace than we otherwise could have. And as we started to build comfort in this space, we realigned the organization and transferred some of these resources, individuals, and capabilities to our business units. And while the Center of Excellence continues to be the source of deep expertise, each business unit now has teams that have these capabilities embedded within them. Another example that I'd like to cite is that when the pandemic hit, we realized very quickly that our sales staff in our stores will need to be reskilled in new ways of engaging with customers, be it through video or phone. And at the same time, we were working on a omni-channel approach and deploying a org-wide CRM initiative that required our entire sales force in stores to build new capabilities. And any upskilling of that order required a very structured approach. Our philosophy has been to use a multi-pronged approach that encompasses starting with creating awareness, moving on to the education piece, the exposure piece, the actual hands-on experience piece, and finally ownership of capability building. And we had excellent partnership between HR and business teams to enable this. At mid and senior levels, we lay a lot of emphasis on working through cross-functional teams, which allows people to broaden their skill sets and horizons. And that happens almost as a way of life at Titan. We also build a lot of emphasis on learning from outside. And we do a fair bit of immersions with best-in-class organizations, as well as focus on career movements based on what I mentioned as a career philosophy of 2 into 2 into 2 plus 7, which really allows people to build breadth and not just depth of capabilities. We also have believed that technology and digitization will play an increasingly important role in building capability. And we've invested in and deployed both a learning management system and a learning experience platform that allows us to democratize learning and empower the user to determine what they want to learn, when they want to learn, from where they want to learn, and how they want to learn. More recently, we've also started to digitize a lot of content and tacit knowledge that many employees have built over a period of time and make that available to large pools of employees in a structured manner. To your question on what challenges we face, I think one is really the speed at which we can digitize the whole learning process and get users to get more comfortable with it. And as with any other large organization, our greatest challenge is around ownership. While as an organization, we can provide the resources and platforms for employees to learn, the onus of making use of these opportunities and the application of learning sits with the individual employees. What we've tried to do to deal with some of these challenges is really enrolling leadership and management teams first and getting them on board, creating evangelists within the organization who are champions of learning, and investing a fair bit of time at a managerial level in getting managers to own capability building for their teams, especially a lot of learning and capability transfer that happens on the job.
Very informative, very valid points, GT. Dallas, most organizations are facing a, skill gap currently in their organization, and there is limited talent pool. That's also a reality. So what do you think they can do to bridge gap between the required skills and the existing talent pool?
Sure. So, first and foremost, I think some great practical examples from GD, right? I think always wonderful to hear the simplicity of how they are thinking through this. So I'll probably step a little higher in the context of the frameworks. We typically talk of three learning frameworks: the open learning framework, the guided learning framework, and the skills first learning frameworks. And I'll link it to one of the points that GD mentioned, which is essentially around learner motivation as well, right? Because fundamentally, when we think of skill building, finally the learner has to be at the center of it. Everything else around it is finally dependent on how much investment the learner will put. What is his motivation to do that learning or skill building? At a higher level, we know that buying out skills is no longer an option. The critical nature of skills and organizational innovation means that you will have to always build it yourself. The currency of a specific skill can be 2 to 3 years. The currency of talent, as GD said, is long term. But the currency of a particular skill could be a smaller one. And hence, you need a lifelong learning process that allows for the currency of the skill to be constantly refreshed. Right? So around this, when we started off our platform, let's say about 8-9 years back, what we normally saw organizations do was take the content, put it out in the domain through an LXP or an LMS for employees to search and choose their path towards learning, right? So towards that, there was simpler goals or metrics that were put around how many hours of learning have you done, right? So there were measurement which is around learning hours that was put across. So we saw that as the first phase of evolution in the context of how learning was being focused on. The second one we saw as critical areas of skills started becoming competitive differentiators. Companies started to pick specific areas. For example, data. I know GD in Titan data was a big element of transformation a few years back, right? From basic literacy at operational level all the way to a fairly strong data team that you today have, right? So in that context, there was more guided learning done where people were mandated into a guided program and saying, you need to do this, right? So those were some skills. Some of those skills were linked to business. Some of those was linked to technology. And there were another set of skills or courses that were linked to more policies and compliances, right? Where you want everybody to know them. So in such cases, we saw companies measuring more course completions as a metric or a north star to say, okay, we are moving in the right direction because we have had more number of people complete the certifications. So it may not be a direct indicator, but it was a good signaling value that there will be some percentage of people who would take that learning, go ahead and apply. They have spent that time in a course completion because the completion of a course shows the learner motivation to go through the entire journey. Right? So there was some signaling value coming from there. The third one, which we've seen over the last couple of years, is what Josh Bersin talks about it as skills first learning. We have on our platform we have introduced something called as skill sets, which is more attaching skill sets to roles. Now these roles could be not just technology but non-technology, marketing, finance, so entry level all the way to a senior most level, right? Soft skills like leadership, right? It could be in the dimension of leading yourself, leading a team, leading an organization, leading transformation. So you think from those dimensions, we started seeing the emergence of skills first learning or role-based learning emerging, right? And there the proficiency levels were finally defined around the individual. So this is where I will connect it to the learner motivation. Earlier ones were push, which was, if you're below the benchmark of learning hours, or if you didn't completion, there would be a reminder, push, etc. that was done. But here the idea was to get the learner to see where he or she stands in the context of the role that they are performing. The skills sets are clearly defined. So there are, let's say there is data scientist, and the data scientist, there are 6 skill sets that you require to get to a proficiency level. And there is a proficiency level defined depending on the level of the role that exists. And as an individual, they could actually see, there is a functionality that we introduced called level set. So I can see where I stand. So in those 5 dimensions, I could, between you and me, let me and Pooja, both of us are data scientists in the same team, same level. But our skills could be different in each of the skill areas, right? You could be great in data visualization. I could be great in, let's say, data analysis, right? So we level set that. And then comes the learner journey, which is very curated in the context of what I need to do. It's not about completing a course. We have 15-hour courses to specializations, which are 5 to 6 months. I don't need to go through the entire thing. It directs us to saying, hey, Dallas, here is what you need to do. Here is, this course from University of Michigan, module 4, and within that, lecture number 6. That's, if you do these, your skills will automatically start, improving in the areas that you are lagging behind. And I can actually see as a learner how my skill proficiency is hitting the bar of the company that is set and improving. It also helps me in the context of talent mobility. As an individual, I can see my target role is the next role that I see. And what do I need to do today to build skills on that, right? So there will be always a set of people who are more ambitious. So hence they will build their skills around it. So the idea is to move your organizational talent in the context of a role-based skills-first learning. And we are seeing that as an adoption. Of course, it's a complex one, which requires an organizational capability to be developed. And then on a platform like ours, there are about 400 ready-made skill sets which you can straight away deploy. We have 6 academies that allows you to do that straight off. So that's what we're seeing as an emerging trend.
Very interesting, Dallas. So I think we just don't have more time. But GD, I would just put this question to you, and I request you to give a very brief answer. What are some of the features you look at while you hunt for a learning platform to upskill your workforce?
Sure, Pooja. And, I'm building on what Dallas just said. Customization to n is equal to 1 is in many ways what he also referred to, and user-centric. So the ability of the platform to allow us to be able to do that, the ease with which we could integrate the platform with existing systems, ease of use and how well the platform empowers the user to learn, and a seamless experience across devices. And 2 other things that I'd like to call out: the AI and analytics capabilities that the platform offers, and partnerships and integration with leading content providers, because we are now no longer looking at one source of learning, but looking at multiple sources of learning, and the overall cost of ownership that one experiences while investing in any platform. So those are things that I would call out as key criteria in my decision making while selecting a learning platform.
Dallas, any last point you would want to make before we close this fireside chat?
Yeah, so, the way I would see this, Pooja, is that I think this is truly an emerging area, right? One of the things that the pandemic did was it did shift a lot of the learning budgets from what we would normally do physical learning into a digital learning. Now, the next part, as GD said, is get to that n is equal to 1, which typically was a marketing term where we would always try to say, okay, you market to the individual to your unique needs. We're seeing the same concepts in the context of learning coming in, right? And technology is enabling that, platforms enable that, right? So I know LXPs, LMSs, content. So they need to come together in the context of dealing with n is equal to 1 learning programs. And it's probably the best time to be here, right? In the context of how you can evolve and innovate in this space, in the L&D space. So I'm looking forward to seeing that evolve for us.
Thank you, Dallas. Thank you, GD, for this riveting conversation. Viewers, stay tuned to our microsite for more such episodes. Thank you. This is all we have for today.